again, this is going to be another very niche specific video, right? So let's say you have a kid that comes into your store and says, hey, I want to get into Speedsoft competitions, and I'm looking at a G&G Firehawk. What do you think? Or a combat machine, or a 5.56, or a straight Crytac, or insert like generic use airsoft gun here. What are your thoughts? Because I had a kid come in today and ask for gun recommendations for someone, and he said he specifically wanted to compete. So this kid had also had a paintball background. So he used to do a little bit of competition paintball. He was maybe early teens. I'd give him like 13, 14 at the oldest. And he said, what gun should I use? The guns I had suggested, and I told him why. I said, you want to either go with an ARP9 or the SSG1. Because when you are looking at tournament play, unless he wanted to be like a snake player or do like the pistol, he wanted to do the rifle thing. He did not want to do the pistol thing. The reason I suggested that is because those are going to have the highest rates of fire. And if you're a tournament player, a high rate of fire and getting the most BBs down range is something that you're going to really want to focus on, especially if you're a back player. This kid was pretty skinny, so I don't know if he's going to be much of a back player. My KWA's guys might not like this one. He was looking at one of the Eves, at the Eve 9 and the Eve 6 or 4 or some number between 4 and 6. He said, what about those? I like the way that looks. This is where the conversation usually comes in. If you don't have some sort of background in this genre, category of player, I guess. Again, focusing on the trigger response, these two G&Gs I suggested are going to be much faster out of the box, particularly this SSG1, than this KWA gun, this KWA Eve. Now, the KWA Eve is amazing. It's so fun. I was busting necks all day at Desert Fox event with this gun. If you want a great rec gun, this is the one you should go with. But for what you're telling me is you want to be able to take a gun out of the box and then jump into a tournament or onto a speed field, I'm telling you from experience and playing those rounds, you're going to want the SSG1. More so over the ARP9 because of the trigger response. And he was looking at like, well, I want to have more of like a realistic looking gun, but also do this, but also do that. But I was like, cool, buddy, my guy. You just told me you wanted to compete, meaning an athletic endeavor, meaning the focus and the emphasis is on performance and being good so you can win. You're trying to do two different things. You're trying to do like cosplay, but competitively. Do you understand how that's not wrong, but it contradicts what you're trying to say? Now, again, this is a conversation that you're gonna have specific to players that wanna compete. If they want to compete, what they're telling you is, I want a gun that's gonna help me win, that's going to improve my skill set so I can beat other people. With something like a standard, like I'm looking at a Raider 2 right now. Raider 2 ain't gonna do it. I'm looking at a Raider Short ain't gonna do it. Firehawk, it's got a good rate of fire, but it's not gonna be comparable to an SSG1. And without upgrades, out of the box, the SSG1 is the gun I usually push on those kids, or the ARP9, depending on what they want. Because a lot of dudes would still run stock ARP9s on my speed field. But for what you're telling me, you want the SSG1. So I loaded all three guns up with an 11-volt battery. Again, we're going tournament. You ain't using an 11-volt battery. I don't know why we're having a conversation about you wanting to be a competitive player. Put an 11-volt in all three of those guns, and he liked the SSG the most because it had the snappier trigger response and it shot faster. That is not to say that any other gun is quote unquote inferior, but when it comes to the specific needs that the customer had based on my knowledge of what those guys use, that is the direction I put them in. You identify the customer needs and you use your previous experience in those products and in like that customer demographic and their needs and wants, and you help that customer make his buying decision that way. Ta-da.